6 hours of driving through a blizzard. Knuckles white on the steering wheel. Windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the relentless snow. All to surprise my family on Christmas with the expensive gifts they demanded. I remember thinking, as I pulled into their driveway, how worth it this would all be. The dangerous journey. The carefully wrapped presents. The 6 months of extra mortgage payments I'd been sending them. I used my old key, the one I kept like some talisman of belonging. Stepped inside quietly, gift bags rustling softly in my hands. I could hear their voices from the living room, my parents and my sister Courtney. I was 10 feet from the doorway when my sister's words froze me in place. I hope she crashes in the snowstorm and dies. Then all her money and that nice apartment would come to me since I'm her only sister. My parents didn't defend me. They laughed. And in that moment, standing in the hallway of my childhood home with expensive gifts in my trembling hands, I realized the truth about my family. I wasn't their daughter. I wasn't their sister. I was their ATM. My name is Juliet, and that Christmas destroyed my family, but it also saved my life. At 35, I thought I had everything figured out. My programming job at a major tech company paid well, challenged me intellectually, and gave me the financial security I dreamed about growing up. 2 years earlier, I'd made the final mortgage payment on my apartment, a moment I'll never forget. Sitting at my kitchen table, staring at that bank statement, feeling a massive weight lift from my shoulders. My savings were solid. My future looked bright. But money, I was learning, couldn't buy the one thing I craved most, genuine connection with the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Living 2 states away from my family had become my normal. My parents still lived in the same house where I grew up, along with my younger sister Courtney, who seemed to bounce between apartments and crash there whenever life got complicated. We weren't close, maybe a phone call once a month, sometimes less. It wasn't that we hated each other, we just existed in completely different worlds. My parents thrived on chaos and noise. Every holiday meant 30 people crammed into their living room, aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, and random people they'd befriended at the grocery store. Mom and Dad fed off the energy of these gatherings. Courtney was exactly like them, drinking in the drama like oxygen. Me? I preferred quiet. I needed space to breathe, to think, to actually hear myself speak without shouting over 3 other conversations. But the worst part of these family events wasn't the noise, it was the interrogation. My aunts would corner me every single time. "So Juliet, do you have a boyfriend yet?" Aunt Olivia would ask, right in front of everyone, her voice carrying that particular tone that made it clear she thought I was broken somehow. "When are you going to settle down and give your parents some grandchildren?" Aunt Elizabeth would chime in, as if my worth as a human being could be measured solely by my relationship status. Then came the comparisons. My Christine got married at 28 and now she has 2 beautiful babies. Or my Sarah just bought a house with her husband. They're so happy. I'd stand there, smiling and nodding, saying that's nice while internally screaming, wondering why my achievements, my career, my financial independence, my contentment, counted for nothing. The worst part? My parents never defended me. Not once did they tell their sisters to back off or respect my choices. They just let it happen, as if I was indeed some project that needed fixing. So I found a solution that seemed to work for everyone. When holidays rolled around, I'd simply send gifts through a courier service. No awkward conversations, no judgment, no explaining why I was still single or why I didn't want children. Mom would call with a shopping list, I'd order everything online, and boom, everyone was happy. For video calls on major holidays, I'd log on for 20 minutes, say hello to the crowd, make an excuse about work, and disappear back into my peaceful life. Courtney lived about 10 minutes from my parents in a tiny rental apartment she could barely afford. At 29, she was still finding herself, jumping between jobs like she was playing hopscotch. Retail, waitressing, reception work, nothing ever stuck. In 5 years, she'd probably had 15 different jobs, each one ending with drama about management or coworkers. Dad worked at the same manufacturing plant for 20 years, recently promoted to supervisor. Mom worked part-time at a doctor's office. They got by, But money was always tight, always a source of stress that I could hear in their voices during our monthly calls. That's probably why they appreciated the courier gifts so much. It helped them financially, and I didn't have to deal with the family circus. Everyone won, right? Last Christmas, I'd really gone all out. Mom got an expensive skincare set she'd been wanting for months. Dad received some high-end tools for his workshop. Courtney got that designer purse she'd been posting about on Instagram. They seemed genuinely happy with everything, which made me feel good about the money I'd spent. And the truth was, I didn't mind spending money on them. They were my family, even if we didn't have much in common beyond shared DNA. I made good money, way more than any of them, so it felt right to help out. But sometimes, in those quiet moments late at night, I wondered if they actually missed me as a person or if they just missed what I could provide. Would they even notice if I didn't call for Christmas? Would they care if the gifts stopped coming? Then this Christmas started approaching, and like clockwork, Mom called. I could hear the TV blaring in the background and Courtney laughing about something. "Hi Juliet, honey," Mom said, and I could already tell by her tone what was coming. "I'm calling about Christmas gifts." "Here we go," I thought, grabbing a pen. "I've got a list ready," she continued. "For me, I'd really love that expensive anti-aging cream set from Sephora, the one that's like $300. Your father wants that new power drill set from Home Depot, the professional one. And Courtney saw this designer handbag at the mall. It's about $400. I was writing it all down, already calculating the total cost in my head. These were significantly more expensive than their usual requests, but whatever. I could afford it, and Christmas came once a year. But as I sat there with that shopping list, something shifted inside me. I'd been thinking about this for weeks, this growing loneliness, this sense that I was missing out on real connection with the people who should matter most. "Actually, Mom," I said, surprising myself, "I want to come home this Christmas. I want to celebrate with you all in person." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. I could hear the TV getting louder, someone changing channels. "Oh," Mom finally said, sounding genuinely surprised, maybe even uncomfortable. "Juliet, you don't need to do that. I mean, you know how it gets here. There's going to be a lot of people. All the aunts and uncles, the Bradfords from next door, probably some of Dad's work friends too." "I know," I said firmly, "but I want to see everyone in person. It's been almost 2 years since I've been home for Christmas." "Well, of course we'd be happy to see you," she said, but her voice sounded strained. "It's just that, you always seem more comfortable with the courier thing." "I'll come on December 24th, Christmas Eve," I said. "Okay, well, that's great then," Mom said, flustered. "I should go start planning for more people. I'll talk to you later, honey." She hung up quickly, which was weird for her. Usually, she wanted to chat for at least 20 minutes about neighborhood gossip and what she'd seen on TV. Christmas was only 3 weeks away, so I got moving. I ordered all the gifts Mom had requested. That anti-aging cream set really was expensive, and Courtney's handbag cost even more than I'd expected. But it was Christmas, and I was feeling generous. I was actually excited, genuinely excited, about going home. I kept imagining sitting around the Christmas tree with everyone, maybe having real conversations instead of those rushed video calls. I even bought extra gifts, nice wine for Dad, fancy chocolates for Mom, and a beautiful scarf for Courtney that I'd spotted in a shop window downtown. Then the weather decided to complicate everything. About a week before Christmas, the temperature dropped like a stone. Not just normal winter cold, but that vicious, bitter cold that makes your face ache the moment you step outside. And then came the snow. At first, just flurries, nothing concerning. But by December 20th, we were getting hammered by a massive snowstorm that seemed to have no end. I'm talking about the kind of snow that just doesn't quit. Looking out my apartment window, I couldn't even see the building across the street. The news kept showing nightmare highway scenes, cars stuck in ditches, trucks jackknifed across multiple lanes, traffic backed up for miles. They were telling people to stay home unless absolutely necessary. My stomach knotted with anxiety. What if I couldn't make it home? What if all those expensive gifts just sat in my apartment while my family waited for me? On December 22nd, my phone rang. "Juliet, honey, please tell me you already bought the gifts," Mom said immediately, skipping any greeting. "Yes, Mom. I got everything on your list," I said. "Oh, thank God," she said, relief flooding her voice. But then her tone shifted completely. "But Juliet, this weather is absolutely terrible. You're not seriously thinking about driving in this, are you? It would have been so much better if you just sent everything by courier like usual. Now we might not get anything for Christmas." I felt that familiar knot in my stomach tighten. "Mom, I said I'd be there. I'll figure out a way." "Juliet, be realistic. Look outside. There's no way you can drive 2 states in this weather. We're going to be left with nothing under the tree." Her voice sounded so frustrated, so disappointed, like I'd personally ruined Christmas by wanting to visit them in person. "I'll try to make it anyway," I said. "Well, I hope you do, but I'm not counting on it," she said, and hung up. I sat there holding my phone, feeling guilty as hell. My family was going to have a terrible Christmas because I'd wanted to break from routine and actually show up in person. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the weather forecast on my phone every hour. Snow, snow, more snow. But then I noticed something. December 23rd was supposed to be slightly better. Not great, but better than the other days. The snow was expected to lighten up in the morning. I made a decision. I'd leave super early on the 23rd instead of waiting until the 24th. Better to arrive a day early than risk not making it at all. I didn't call to tell them I was changing my plans. I figured I'd surprise them, show up with all the gifts, and prove that I could actually follow through on something for once. At 4 in the morning on December 23rd, I loaded up my car with all the presents. The drive was absolutely brutal, 6 hours of white-knuckle driving through the worst weather I'd ever experienced. My windshield wipers could barely keep up with the snow, and I had to drive about 30 miles per hour the entire way because visibility was maybe 10 feet ahead of my car. The radio kept playing warnings about accidents and road closures. Every few minutes, there'd be another traffic report about some massive pileup or another highway getting shut down. I kept thinking maybe I should turn around, but I was already committed. The guilt of disappointing them again felt worse than the fear of the storm. I stopped for gas twice, and both times the attendants looked at me like I was completely insane for being out in this weather. Maybe I was. But I made it. After 6 hours of the most stressful driving of my life, I finally pulled onto my parents' street. The snow was still falling, but not as heavily as before. I parked in front of their house and looked around. Just Mom's car and Dad's truck in the driveway, plus Courtney's little Honda. No other cars yet, which meant the big family gathering hadn't started. Perfect timing. I could surprise them, give them their gifts, and maybe we'd have a few precious hours of just family time before everyone else showed up and the chaos began. I grabbed a few of the gift bags and walked up to the front door, my boots crunching through the snow. I still had my old house key on my keychain from when I lived there during college, so I figured I'd just let myself in and surprise them. The key still worked. I opened the door as quietly as possible and stepped inside, setting the gifts down carefully so they wouldn't make any noise. I could hear voices coming from the living room, Mom, Dad, and Courtney all talking. I smiled to myself. This was going to be such a wonderful surprise. I'd just walk in there and say surprise. I made it, and they'd be so happy to see me, so grateful that I'd driven through a blizzard to be with them. I took a few quiet steps toward the living room, planning to just appear in the doorway. I was maybe 10 feet from the living room when I heard Mom's voice clearly. "Well, Juliet might actually show up tomorrow with the gifts," she was saying. I stopped walking and smiled, unconsciously setting down the gift bags so I could hear them better. They were talking about me. I was about to make their day. But then Dad's voice cut through my happy thoughts like a knife. "That girl is acting like a complete fool, deciding to drive all this way in a snowstorm just to bring us some presents. She should have just sent them by courier like always. What's wrong with her?" My stomach dropped. "What?" Then Courtney laughed. Actually laughed, this cruel, dismissive sound. "You know what I hope?" she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I hope she crashes in the snowstorm and dies. Then all her money and that nice apartment would come to me since I'm her only sister. I couldn't breathe. I literally could not breathe. My own sister, my baby sister, who I'd been buying gifts for, sending money to, caring about for years, had just said she hoped I would die. I waited for Mom and Dad to say something, to tell Courtney that was a horrible thing to say, to defend me in some way. Instead, they laughed too. Mom actually laughed and said, "Courtney, you know what? I totally get where you're coming from. We're all getting tired of Juliet's little handouts anyway. She acts like she's doing us this huge favor, but she doesn't understand that we need real money, not just the scraps she throws our way." "Exactly," Dad said. "She makes all this money at her fancy job, but still acts like giving us a few $100s here and there is some big sacrifice. And honestly," Mom continued, "she's going to be completely out of place at tomorrow's party. You know how she gets around people. She'll just sit there with that sour look on her face and ruin everyone's good time." "She's always been weird," Courtney said, venom in her voice. "Even when we were kids, she never fit in with the family. Remember how she used to hide in her room during parties? And now she thinks she can just show up and play happy family for one day. It's pathetic," Dad said. I stood there in that hallway, listening to my family tear me apart like I was their worst enemy instead of someone who'd been helping them financially for years. They had no idea I was there. No idea I'd just driven 6 hours through a blizzard to bring them exactly what they'd asked for. No idea I'd been excited to see them, to spend time with them, to finally be part of the family. In my shock and heartbreak, I'd completely forgotten about the gift bags I'd set down. All I could think about was getting out of there before I completely fell apart. I turned around and walked back to the front door as quietly as possible, stepped back out into the snow. The cold air hit my face, but I barely felt it. I was completely numb. I got in my car and just sat there for a minute, staring at their house. The warm yellow light coming from the living room windows, the Christmas wreath on the front door, it all looked so normal and cozy from the outside. But inside, my family had just spent 20 minutes explaining to each other why they wished I was dead. I started the car and drove away slowly, carefully. I didn't want to spin out in their driveway and give the neighbors something to talk about. As I drove down their street, I wasn't crying. I thought I would be, but I wasn't. Instead, I was thinking more clearly than I had in years. I needed to go home. That was it. Just go home and figure out what to do next. About 30 minutes into the drive back, my phone started ringing. Then it kept ringing. I could see it was Mom calling, then Dad, then Courtney, over and over. They must have found the gifts I'd unknowingly left behind. They probably realized I'd been there, heard everything, and left without saying a word. Now they were panicking, but I didn't answer. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, thanks for hoping I'd die in a car crash. Sorry I ruined your evening by existing." I stopped at 2 different roadside cafes on the way home, not because I was hungry, but because I needed to sit somewhere quiet and try to process what had just happened. At the second cafe, I finally looked at my phone. 17 missed calls. Text messages too. "Mom, Juliet, we found the gifts. Why did you leave? We don't understand what happened. Dad, your mother said you were here. Call us back. Courtney, Juliet, are you okay? Why didn't you stay? Did something happen?" I stared at those messages. They were acting like they had no idea why I'd left. Like they hadn't just spent 20 minutes talking about how much they couldn't stand me and how they hoped I'd die in a car accident. Sitting there at that little cafe table, I started remembering everything I'd actually done for my family over the years. Not just the Christmas gifts or birthday presents, the real stuff that mattered. Every month for the past 4 years, I'd been transferring $1,500 to Mom's account to help with their mortgage payments. $1,500. Every single month. That's $18,000 a year, $72,000 total so far. And Courtney, I'd been sending her $1,000 every month for her apartment rent because she could never hold down a job long enough to pay it herself, and Mom and Dad couldn't afford to help her and pay their own bills too. So that's $2,500 a month, $30,000 a year that I'd been sending to my family for years. While they sat around talking about what a burden I was and how my handouts weren't enough for them, they'd been taking my money, cashing my checks, using my credit card numbers for online purchases I'd approved. And the whole time, they couldn't stand me. They were just waiting for me to die so they could get more. I felt sick, actually, physically sick. After a few more hours of careful driving, I finally made it home. I sat down at my computer and logged into my banking app. I found the automatic transfers I'd set up years ago, Mom's mortgage help, Courtney's rent money, both scheduled to go out again in just a few days for January. I canceled them. Then I took a screenshot of the cancellation confirmations and sent the image to Mom, Dad, and Courtney in a group text. Merry Christmas. This is your main gift from me this year. Then I turned off my phone and went to bed. When I woke up on December 24th, Christmas Eve, I turned my phone back on. 70 missed calls. 80. From all three of them. The text messages were absolutely insane. Juliet, what did you do? Why would you cancel the payments? We don't understand why you're doing this to us. I sent one message to Mom. I heard you talking yesterday about how you hoped I would die in a car accident. You said you were tired of my money and that I ruined everything. So now you don't have to deal with me or my money ever again. I don't consider you my family anymore. Don't contact me. Then I blocked all their phone numbers. Blocked them on Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, everywhere. Every social media platform, every messaging app, everything. I spent Christmas alone. Ordered food from the restaurant down the street. Watched movies. It was quiet and peaceful, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about disappointing anyone or not being good enough for my own family. My phone stayed silent for the rest of Christmas Day, and I actually loved it. No fake conversations, no pretending everything was fine, no awkward small talk about my job or my love life. Just me, some good takeout food, and a Netflix marathon. The next few days were strange but good. I went back to work after the holiday break, and nobody bothered me. No missed calls, no urgent texts, no family drama bleeding into my professional life. It was amazing how much more focused I felt without that constant background stress. But then, right before New Year's, I heard knocking at my door. Not regular knocking, persistent, desperate knocking that wouldn't stop. I looked through the peephole, and there they were. Mom, Dad, and Courtney. They'd driven 2 states to show up at my apartment. I opened the door and just stood there looking at them. Mom's eyes were red and puffy. She'd been crying, probably for a while. Juliet, honey, you misunderstood what you heard, she said immediately. We were just joking around. You know how families joke with each other. Joking? I said. You were joking about hoping I'd die in a car crash? Courtney started crying too. Juliet, I didn't mean it. It was just a really bad joke. I was stressed about money and I said something stupid. Dad cleared his throat. Your sister feels terrible about what she said. We all do. But you have to understand, we never meant any of it. I looked at the 3 of them standing in my hallway, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no guilt. Just emptiness. You wanted me dead, I said. You took my money for years and complained it wasn't enough. You said I ruined family gatherings just by existing. And now you want me to believe you were joking? Juliet, please, Mom said. We're family. Families fight and say things they don't mean, but we always work it out. No, I said. We don't. I don't want to work this out. I don't want to pretend this never happened. I heard what you really think about me. They all started talking at once, trying to explain and apologize and make excuses. But I'd heard enough. I want you to leave, I said. Mom wiped her eyes. Juliet, it's going to be really hard for us without your help. The mortgage payments, Courtney's rent. That's not my problem anymore, I said. I started closing the door, but Mom put her hand against it. Please don't do this, she said. It's already done, I said, and I shut the door. About a month later, I started getting calls from unknown numbers. I ignored them for days, but they kept calling. Finally, I answered one. Juliet, this is your Aunt Olivia. I'm calling from my friend's phone because I know you blocked everyone. Your parents are having serious problems with their mortgage. Your father had to take on extra shifts at work, and Courtney had to move back in with them to help pay the bills. They really need your help. Aunt Olivia, did they tell you why I stopped helping them? They said you had some kind of fight, but families fight all the time. You need to stop being so stubborn and help them out. So I told her. I told her exactly what I'd heard that day, about Courtney hoping I'd die, about my parents laughing and agreeing, about them complaining that my money wasn't enough. The line went quiet for a long time. I had no idea, Aunt Olivia finally said. Juliet, I'm so sorry. I thought it was just some silly argument about Christmas plans. Now you know, I said. I won't bother you about this again, she said. You're absolutely right to stay away from them. And she hung up. A few more months passed. I got a promotion at work, which came with a substantial raise. I started taking pottery classes on weekends. I joined a hiking group and made some genuinely good friends. I even went on a few dates with this guy from my photography course. My life got better in ways I didn't even realize it could. Without the constant stress of managing my family's financial problems and emotional drama, I had so much more energy for my own life, my own growth, my own happiness. I still think about them sometimes, wonder how they're doing, if they figured out their money problems, if Courtney ever got her life together. But I don't feel guilty about it anymore. They showed me exactly who they really were that day. They showed me that all those years of help and gifts and trying to be a good daughter and sister meant absolutely nothing to them. I was just a bank account with legs, a resource to be exploited while they complained about me behind my back. Now I'm free from all of that. I don't owe them anything, and I don't have to pretend to be part of a family that never really wanted me anyway. Sometimes the most painful truths are also the most liberating ones. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to find everything you actually need. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with others who might be carrying the weight of toxic relationships, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about finding freedom through painful truths. Remember, family isn't always who you're born to, sometimes it's who you choose to let into your heart.